boys. And unfortunately, Eli's body is found crammed under a bed with milky dead eyes. He is covered in spiders and spider webs. At this, the remaining 5 are disgusted and agree to leave the house and quit their participation in the study. If only they could find their phones and car keys. So, searching the grounds to try and find their car keys and their cars. The location of Noah is found, and he is found hanging from a tree near a garage shed. Fully convinced now something is wrong here. Eve, the most logical, skeptical Eve, smashes open the shed window so they can crawl inside and try to find where some way of escape. The estates are quite remote. You have to travel on the highway to find the next closest town, and they need to find something. But the window scratches her and quickly grows into a festering wound. When they are unable to locate their vehicles, Harper decides to split away from his sister, and he takes off down the highway in an attempt to flag a car down for help and suggests that the girls stay put until he returns. Just as we were finishing last week, Sophia walks back towards the terrace and glances back at the grounds towards the garage. And through the broken garage window, she believes that she has seen a face grinning through it with the long fingers curling over the edge. Creepy indeed. So, this is where we're going to get cozy and get settled in for some more horror discoveries. Last week, you guys were... I really liked the comparison to the, And Then There Were None, which I've not read, but I have seen the play of And Then There Were None. And so I can definitely see the comparison of, everyone is here together, and one by one, things start to go wrong. And what can we, can we trust those around us? Can we trust what we believe to be true? I think that's a really great comparison of the vibes that we're experiencing here. And I did want to pin you guys. If you are looking for your own copy of Something Dead, I do have a link for you. I'm going to pin it for the stream. I do have a link there if you want to check out a version for yourself. You can get it for your Kindle. You can get it hardcover and softcover. Check it out. I believe Andrea, is going to be working on more works in this sort of creepy thriller sort of genre. But very, very happy to be supporting her debut. And again, very, very grateful to have our first contemporary self-published read on the channel. Okie dokie, y'all. Why don't we turn on some creepy music and settle in for our first chapter of the evening. Perfect. All right. Chapter 10. Upstairs or downstairs? Eve said as she rubbed at her arm again. We were upstairs a bit yesterday, but we were so focused on finding dolls, we weren't really checking thoroughly for anything else, Winna explained. We didn't get up to the top floor, though. I could see a room with a bunch of monitors in the attic. In fact, Eve was looking at the floor plans. There's an observatory. Now, I know it's stars and stuff, but it would be a clever place to observe from. Sophia looked over her friend's shoulder. Yeah, let's try that. I'd rather go up instead of to the basement of the creepy house. Especially since we have room outlines, but nothing else is marked, Eve agreed. Upstairs it is, Sophia said and pointed to the right. Let's take the stairs that will lead to the other wing of bedrooms. Then we can take the servant staircase to come down. Okay, Eve agreed and Winna nodded. Maybe a quick sweep of the floor to make sure we aren't missing anything glaringly obvious, Eve suggested. Also, Estelle may be around. Don't roll your eyes, Winna. I know Harper thought it was slim, but it doesn't hurt to look for her. Fine, but the longer we're in here, the darker it gets for our walk back to civilization. Winna shrugged and headed past the library and theater to the stairs. She was notably jumpier without the security of her brother's presence. At the top of the stairs, there were 5 more bedrooms. 2 were overlooking the terrace that were across from Sophia and Eve's room. The other 3 had windows overlooking the garage and forest behind the house. There was nothing special about the rooms. They had large beds and dressers with strange and disturbing artwork hung on gaudy damask wallpaper. Sophia made faces at the odd rituals depicted in the painting, all centered around bloodshed and gore. There were humans sacrificing animals or other humans, shadows and demons hungrily hunched over death-stricken maidens, and one where a horribly disfigured face stared out at the observer with a look of sheer terror. Each room looked caked with dust and yellowed like an old-fashioned photograph. Although mirrors to their counterparts in the other wing, these rooms clearly were not prepared to have guests occupying them. Maybe we can do the roof terrace and observatory first? Eve stopped beside the staircase leading up to the roof. Only half of it is accessible through these stairs, I think. She pointed to the floor plan. Actually, servants used to have their room upstairs. If a guest came upstairs to check out the stars, they wouldn't want servants to access it too. I read it in a book somewhere. Or maybe it was Downton Abbey. The stairway was narrower than the others, and Sophia felt a little claustrophobic. She followed behind the other 2, but made sure she was right on their heels. The center of her back was tense, and she imagined something grabbing her from behind. The view of the yard from the roof was stunning. An ocean of lush greens surrounded them. The manicured grass shivered in the slight breeze, and the trees went on forever, rising and falling with the landscape. She couldn't even see the winding road as they drove in on. He must be past the gate already. Winna was squinting toward the bend in the front drive. Probably, Eve said. Absently, she was looking at the decaying statues. This place could be beautiful. Imagine plants lining all the railings, like winding vines and stuff. Stuff's just cracked and dirty stone. She gestured at a toga-clad stone lady with no head and a bow. And some pillars with old and cared-for statues. This section isn't even bolted down very well. Winna wiggled the one in front of her. Sophia felt the urge to pull her away from the edge. There's the observatory. Sophia pointed at the only other room accessible from the terrace and leading the way. There were no video monitors and no team of research scientists. It was an amphitheater leading down to a circular stage. At the center of the stage, there was a large telescope resting with its lens pointed through the open ceiling. Eve's shoulders slumped and she scratched at her forearm. I know it was silly, but I thought this could have been something. No point staying here anymore then, Sophia decided. Then she swatted Eve's hand. No more scratching, you'll only irritate it. Eve gently prodded her arm as she responded. It's been burning since I cut it, Soph. She took the hoodie from her waist, slipping it on again. The blotchy bloodstains weren't too noticeable along the one sleeve. It would maybe help keep anything from getting in the cut. We'll clean it up when we pass the bathroom, Sophia promised, and the three turned and headed back down the stairs. This time, Sophia was at the front. The first thing she noticed when she neared the bottom of the stairs was the sobbing. It was quiet, but filled out the silence. Winna and Eve looked around when they joined her at the foot of the stairs. It sounds like Estelle, Eve murmured. Take out the floor plan, Sophia said. It sounds like it's coming from the next room, and it's getting louder. It was true. The sobbing had become wailing, and it was clearly Estelle. The room nestled in the corner was a sitting room. Sophia was happy that Eve took the lead, heading to the door beside the stairs and pushing it open. She turned on the light. The sconces flickered a few times before staying on. Sophia froze in the doorway, causing Winna to bump into her. The dim light cast a yellowy hue throughout the room, revealing over 100 dolls arranged on shelves and lined up neatly on the two sofas. They were old-fashioned dolls with porcelain heads and intricate outfits with perfectly set curls, same as the dolls in the music room. The dresses were various shades of pastels or jewel tones. It was eerie to have unblinking, lifeless eyes watching the room. Too many creepy dolls in one place. Eve poked a taller one on a stand with her foot, causing the chestnut pigtails to bounce. This would have been the jackpot for me and Harper, Winna mumbled behind Sophia. You didn't check here when you went through this floor? Sophia asked. No, it was locked, replied Winna. I thought the crying was coming from inside here, Sophia said as she studied the dolls. She gripped the screwdriver, reassured she had something to defend herself with. Well, I sure hope that these things weren't making that noise. Eve made a face as she twisted the blonde curl of a doll with a gingham dress. She called, Estelle? The crying had stopped. It was silent once more on the second floor. Well, I don't think there's anything we need here, just nightmare fuel, Winna said. She was still behind Sophia, looking in the doorway. Yeah, Sophia agreed. I think we should hustle. The room felt cold and too crowded, even though she was just in the doorway. Okay, Eve agreed. On to the next room. She trailed off, pulling the folded floor plan out of her pocket of her jeans and looking at it. Second dining room? Sophia saw that Eve had pushed up her sleeves sometime as they explored. The persistent scratching at her forearm had resulted in angry red gashes along her skin. Eve noticed her looking and shrugged her off. I must have been allergic to something. It just burns a little bit. But, as she explained, I don't want to waste any time now looking for antibiotic lotion. Harper will be back with help, or we'll get phones and get out of here. I can have it looked at then. When we pass the bathroom, I'll rinse it out like you suggested before. Sophia backed off, raising her hands in surrender, but furrowed her brow as she watched Eve lead the way into the dining room, rubbing at the other forearm. The room was smaller than the main dining room, and there were no nooks or crannies that needed searching. The room felt dark and close, with dark-stained mahogany wainscoting and navy walls. There was a cabinet along one wall filled with carefully arranged floral china. Cobwebs sprawled haphazardly across the teacups and dinner plates. Eve circled the mahogany table, creating a trail in the blanket of dust with her finger. Winna stood near the door beside Sophia, hugging herself and looking small. No Estelle or equipment to monitor our whereabouts, just like when Harper and I checked. Winna gestured toward the door so they could continue their search. Where next? Asked Sophia, and Eve handed her the map. Reading room. It has a balcony on it. Eve opened up the next door. I think we can skip the servants' quarters upstairs and head to the basement after the gallery and master. Of course we're going to have to go in the basement, Winna grumbled, following Eve into the small room. Sophia stepped in and immediately thought about how every house needed a reading room. There were 2 large, cozy-looking armchairs that were the exact opposite from the rigid, upholstered ones in the study. They looked out the large French doors onto the balcony. She could picture curling up with a book, the lamp over her shoulder providing light as she sipped on some tea and got lost in a book. Unfortunately, the cozy feeling drained away as she noticed the faded colors and holes chewed into the fabric of the chairs. The other 2 ladies were grimacing and covering their faces from the middle of the room, and Sophia, too, was assailed by a horrid smell. Something rotting overpowered her senses as she took another step into the room. Sophia gagged and stepped aside to let the other 2 escape the room. As she followed them out, she thought she saw movement from a shadowed corridor. She stopped in the doorway to look closer, but there was nothing that could have shifted. There were just vines running along the wallpaper. She felt the back of her neck prickle, like something was watching her from the other side of the room. As she turned to see, the vines seemed to be moving along the walls, and again, there was a shadowed movement that seemed to only stay within her peripheries. It was nothing except an optical illusion. She took a big breath and slowly let her lungs deflate. She shut the door on the terrible smell and relaxed as she no longer felt the weight of being watched. Eve was too busy rubbing behind her ear to notice Sophia's flustered exit, and Winna was moving past the servants' stairs, focused on checking the rooms and getting out. Winna opened the next door. It was an art gallery. As the 3 women shuffled inside, Sophia noticed that everything was covered in off-white sheets. Faded cloth was draped all over the paintings on the walls and obscuring the other odd shapes scattered around the room. When it gasped, jumping and grabbing Eve's arm. Did the one move over there? When it pointed, her voice a squeak in the echoey space. Sophia and Eve turned to where Winna indicated, but everything was eerily still. Eve shook off Winna, walking into the nearest sheet and pulling away the cover. She flinched, jumping back. She had raised the wrench to defend herself. A demon was lunging at her. The statue looked so alive, with each detail so defined. Its gnarled features were contorted with savage rage and hunger. The snarling mouth had dangerously pointed fangs and horns curled like a ram's sprouting from the forehead. Its clawed hands were bent, just about to grab whatever prey it was hunting. A tail whipped around the figure like it was frozen mid-motion. Eve snorted at herself, lowering her weapon, and then stepped toward the statue again. Nothing but stone, she said. Her voice took on a sarcastic bite as she said, Hey, Soph, mark us down another 1,000. Think there's actually a study at this point? Sophia didn't think it was funny, though, and she knew the fear plastered across Eve's face moments ago was real, too. It moved again. Winna grabbed onto Sophia's arm. I swear. Sophia approached the statue that Winna had pointed at. It was covered like the rest, and nothing around it was disturbed. Dread knotted at her stomach, and Sophia felt her heart pounding in her ears. She took the screwdriver from her pocket, gripping it in her fist, just in case. She didn't want to move the sheet, but she also knew it was probably another gargoyle like the last one. Probably. She felt Eve come up behind her, brushing against the back of her arm. It gave Sophia a boost of courage, so she took a deep breath and reached out, lightly grabbing the white sheet. The low, groaning creak of floorboards sounded in the hallway just outside the room in the corridor, causing all 3 ladies to stop and turn toward the door. The first thing Sophia noticed was that Eve was not behind her. Instead, her friend was still beside the first statue. Sophia immediately let the sheet drop and ran her hand down the arm where she thought she'd felt the nudge. Sophia then moved closer to Winna as Eve walked directly to the doorway and stuck her head out into the hall. "Estelle?" Eve called. Eve straightened up, the blood draining from her features as she ran a hand through her hair that had become increasingly frizzled. "It's nothing," she explained. "Just the house settling." Winna cast a nervous look behind Sophia at the remaining hidden statues, which made Sophia's skin crawl. She didn't want to hear if something moved again. Sophia cleared her throat, causing Winna to start. She took the younger woman's arm. "How about we head downstairs?" With no objections, the three left the gallery and stopped at the top of the servants' staircase, looking down. It was uninvitingly narrow and dark. "What if we do the master bedroom instead?" suggested Eve, "and go downstairs to the foyer?" "Yes," both Sophia and Winna agreed quickly. Neither Estelle nor any trace of the psychologists were in the master bedroom. It was exceedingly average, with the beds similar to the ones in the guest rooms, with a large armoire. The only differences were the ensuite was larger and would have been more grand if it wasn't grimy, and there was a poofy armchair in the corner, facing the private balcony. No one seemed interested in looking around to see what other marvels might be in the room, and the three hurried out in the main foyer down the stairs by the entrance. The shrill ringing of a telephone cut through the silence as they got to the center of the room. "Oh, good," Sophia exclaimed as hope flooded through her. "We can let people know we need help." She'd forgotten the introductory letter explained. There was a phone on site. They didn't even need their phones. "I think it's through there." Winna pointed to the sitting room, but Eve was already through the door. "Hello?" Eve was saying. "Who is this? Hello?" Eve looked disgusted as she slammed the receiver on the hook. "Unbelievable!" She scratched at the back of her neck in frustration. "What is?" Winna had come in at the same time as Sophia. "Just breathing," Eve growled. "Heavy breathing like a prank call." Suddenly, Eve's attention snapped back to the phone. "What?" Sophia and Winna both blurted, alarmed. Sophia hadn't heard it ring again, but Eve was already lifting the receiver. "Trying to call 911, Eve muttered as she slowly used the rotary phone to input the numbers. Eve's shoulders sank moments later, and her eyebrows drew together as she frowned. "It isn't ringing," she explained. "There isn't even a dial tone." Suddenly, her eyes lit up for a moment, and she yelled into the phone. "Hi? Hello? We need help. We're in a..." But she cut off, and then her expression became stormy as she slammed the phone down. "I thought..." She trailed off. "I thought someone had picked up, but it was just the breathing, the same as before." "You don't think..." Sophia hazarded, sharing the thought that materialized in her head. "That's the psychopath that's doing all this, do you?" Eve pressed her hands to the side of her face and looked up at the roof. "I don't know, Soph. I'm worried we're maybe just idiots who signed up to be picked off in this remote hellhole." Eve's voice shook uncharacteristically as she let her arms drop limply to her sides. "I'm trying to hold it together here, but it's getting so hard." Sophia was shocked at her friend's honesty and opened her arms for Eve. Eve hugged Sophia tightly and pulled back until she held Sophia's hands. "I just can't help but think that Daniel would know what to do. I wouldn't want him here experiencing this, but I miss him." Sophia nodded. Daniel was good for Eve. She was always confident, but he had always supported her and built up her confidence. It'd be nice to have another person they knew and trusted there with them. "Let's just leave then," Winna spoke up, her shoulders set and conviction filling her eyes. "We'll catch up to Harper and leave. Ori's already found someone to help him, and they'll meet us as we're heading back on the road." "Okay," Sophia nodded. "Yeah, okay. We have our warm clothes and shoes. Let's do it." The thought of being vulnerable in the wilderness appealed more to Sophia than being stuck in a house with a killer. The phone rang again, making all three women jump as it vibrated from the hook. Sophia picked it up, ready to berate the breathing on the other end for spooking the bravest person that she knew. But there was no breathing. There was only sobbing. It was the same muffled crying they'd heard upstairs. "Estelle, is that you? Where are you?" Sophia frantically blurted into the phone. She got no response, but the weeping continued and she ended up hanging up. She suddenly felt lightheaded and had to steady herself against the desk. She was about to explain what she heard to the expectant companions when the lights flickered again, going out for a few seconds before turning back on. All three had moved instinctively closer together in the dark, and they all shared wide-eyed expressions as they looked around. "After you," Eve gestured to the door they had entered through. The faint sobbing resonated through the foyer, and Sophia perked up, trying to find the source. "If Estelle is hurt or lost, we need to try to find her." Eve was also trying to pinpoint where the sound came from. "Do you think it's the basement?" she asked finally, shoulders dropping to match Winna's horrified expression. "No," Sophia responded as she squinted towards the large door at the top of the stairs. "It still sounds like it's coming from upstairs somewhere." She sighed. "As much as I hate it, let's do one last sweep to see, and then we head out, Estelle or no." "I don't like this," Winna muttered as she followed Sophia and Eve up the stairs. "It feels like we're wasting time." The sobbing had become wailing, and it was louder in the main second-floor corridor. It seemed to bounce off the walls and echo around them. The trio followed the sound until they stood again in front of the second sitting room door. "Creepy dolls," Winna whined and shrank into herself. Eve locked eyes with Sophia and reaffirmed, "A quick look." She threw open the door harder than necessary, and all three women stared into the dim space from the corridor. The crying had, once again, stopped. End of chapter 10. Oh dear. It is not going very well for our squad. But now that they've made the resolution to leave, they're just doing one final sweep in hopes that they can track it down, Estelle. Hopefully they can scoot out of here and find their way to safety. Sorry, Crazy. I see that you missed the Pokemon. You were like this close. So close there. I feel like I have, a pretty good sense of like where everything is in the house. And yeah, we're starting to get to, we've checked in most of the rooms now at this point. We just haven't gone down to the basement, but we've found most of the other rooms so far. We'll